saving up to 70 liters per load. Hey, good morning. I'm Vicki Witt in for Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers right now on Morning News Now. Fueling frustration, a growing struggle for millions of Americans. With inflation still at record highs this morning, gas prices soaring in several states, forcing drivers to cut back when they fill up.
I'm supposed to be putting premium in my truck now, but I got to put regular, and then that's throwing everything out because I can't afford it.
And we're literally working just to put gas in our cars. And it's just not working for anybody. And while new inflation numbers are signaling some relief may be on the way, the president sharing his plan to bring all those rising costs back down. We'll bring you the latest. Blocked new developments in the fight over abortion rights in America. A long shot bill to keep abortion legal nationwide officially fails in the Senate. Plus, more protests over the possible end of Roe versus Wade. We'll have more on the fallout. That's what it all means ahead of the midterm elections. Reduced to rubble, breaking overnight, a fast-moving fire ripping through an upscale California community. Right now, evacuations underway in Orange County, where several million-dollar homes have already been destroyed. We'll bring you the latest on the fight to contain the flames. And changing the GameStop. It's been more than a year since Reddit users sent GameStop shares soaring. Now we're getting a look at how it all went down. We'll talk to someone featured in a new NBC News Studios film all about the stock surge that changed Wall Street.
So much hocus pocus, and really interesting to hear the backstory on that.
And do you remember how we all could not stop talking about it?
We would not bring it 20% because it was such an amazing story. It really was. So the documentary is very, very cool, and we'll bring in part of that conversation in a little bit this morning. Begin, though, with the impact of rising prices everywhere and the pain that's causing millions of Americans.
Now, the new April numbers revealing that inflation still remains close to a 40-year high. And you've likely noticed just about everything costs more now, from the grocery store to the gas pump. According to AAA, the average price of a regular gallon of gas, and we didn't even want to talk about this, it's $4.42. To put that into perspective, that's up 18 cents from just a week ago and more than $1.40 from last year. One of the states really feeling the pinch is Georgia. It ranks 7th of all states in miles driven by residents per year. And that is where we find NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber. She's in Gainesville, Georgia. Ellison, great to see you. Good morning. Over the past few years, Georgia has been at the center of the political universe. What are people there saying about the rising cost of gas, and who do they blame?
Yeah, they are incredibly frustrated. You talked about it. The national gas average today for the country is $4.42. Here in Georgia, the average this morning, $3.95. We went to 3 different politically significant but politically different counties to try and get a sense of what voters here think about all of this. We went to DeKalb County first. That's a solidly blue county that Democrats focus on to try and get high turnout. Then we went to Gwinnett County. That's a really important swing county these days. Then we came here to Hall County, which is a solidly red county that Republicans need and want high turnout in. As we spoke to people in all 3 counties, every single person told us they are frustrated with the prices that they're seeing at the pump and the grocery store. They say they feel like it is not sustainable. Something needs to change. But when we ask them who or what is to blame, the answer is different. Listen.
Look, it's a political issue. I don't think it's mine as well. I feel like it's just because Russia, how they control a lot of the oil and stuff like that. Who do we take? With political issues, do you pick this person because even though they got some great issues, but they're not wanting to deal with the major issue of gas right now? Or do you pick the person that's going to deal with the gas issue, but then you don't like the rest of this issue?
All right, so bear with me for a second because I'm going to try and do a little bit of math. We were talking to a gas station, a business owner yesterday. He owned 1 or 2 gas stations, and he said, look, this is actually really bad for me as a business owner as well. He said the prime price that he was paying to buy a gallon of gas from Chevron was $3.37. He said he has to pay about 31 cents in federal taxes. In Georgia, the excise tax, that's gone at least until the end of the month. The governor suspended that. He said then there's also sales tax, not to mention that you have to pay the guy or the person who delivers the gas. And he says they're paying roughly $3.68 a gallon. He was selling it at $3.89. He said typically right now, they're only seeing a profit margin of somewhere between 10 and 12 cents per gallon. And they're actually really relying on the things they're selling inside the stores to make a profit. So he was saying, all in all, he's hearing from customers they're frustrated. He said he's frustrated as well. Vicki?
Well, Georgia also has a Senate seat on the ballot this November, and in a state that has a notorious traffic issue, infrastructure issues. What are the candidates saying they're going to do to fix these problems?
The other question is this going to be a campaign issue? When you talk to Republicans, they say yes, absolutely. The leading Republican Senate hopeful right now, Herschel Walker, in a statement from his campaign given to NBC News, he said this, quote, President Biden and Senator Warnock have managed to destroy the U.S. economy in just 16 months. I'm hearing from Georgia voters who say they didn't know a vote for Senator Warnock would cost them an extra 8.3% inflation tax on everything. These policies don't just happen, he says. They are a direct result of President Biden and Senator Warnock canceling the Keystone Pipeline, shipping American jobs overseas, and recklessly spending money we don't have. Senator Raphael Warnock, the incumbent Senate Democrat, his campaign told us this, quote, Reverend Warnock is laser focused on lowering costs for hardworking families all across the state. He is leading the fight to freeze the gas tax, cap the cost of insulin, and bring down the cost of prescription drugs, while also holding big corporations that are making record profits accountable for price gouging. I was talking to a source with Herschel Walker's campaign, and they told us they believe for Republicans heading into the general election, which right now it looks like the candidate will most likely be Herschel Walker based on the polls, they say they feel like gas prices are the main issue in Georgia and something they will focus heavily on in a general election. Vicki?
Allison Barber, good to see you. First time I've seen you since you got married, so congratulations.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Now, as we mentioned, and you're probably noticing, it's not just gas that's more expensive. The cost of food, cars, and electricity have all soared. And Americans are having a hard time making ends meet as a result. NBC News business and tech correspondent Jolene Kent has all out.
President Biden focusing on American farmers in his latest attempt to bring down food prices.
Right now, America's fighting on two fronts. At home, it's inflation and rising prices. Abroad, it's helping Ukrainians defend their democracy.
In April, inflation went up 8.3% compared to last year. The cost of rent, food, airfares, and new vehicles drove up prices. The president visiting an Illinois farm offering a new plan which in part expands crop insurance for farmers who harvest two crops in the same field. Missouri mother of two, Megan Kaiser, feels it at the supermarket with grocery prices up nearly 11% compared to last year.
You can kind of see that things are moving and just everything feels more expensive.
She feels it on the road, with gas prices soaring even higher.
When you're at the pump, you're thinking, okay, when is it going to stop rolling, right?
And she and her husband Mark also feel it on their family farm, where the cost of fertilizer is skyrocketing.
How much were you paying last year for nitrogen versus now? So last year it was around $270 per ton, and now it's over $1,400 per ton.
What does that do to your budget and your ability to survive?
Well, it's scary.
Although the corn and soybeans they grow are selling at higher prices right now, Kaiser says the rising price of what goes into the crops put the family business at risk.
Everything's higher. Equipment's higher, land is higher, seed costs are up.
What is President Biden going to do to reduce inflation for American farmers who are helping to produce what we eat and what we serve on our kitchen tables?
That's a great question. First, he's doubling federal funding for fertilizer to try to get more fertilizer out to the farms that need it. Second, he's going to use precision agricultural techniques to help our farmers actually increase their crop production.
Despite inflation, President Biden's top economic advisor, Brian Deese, says the administration is also aware corporations have been bringing in record profits.
So one of our key focus has been, where can we encourage more competition, particularly by having more small businesses, more entrepreneurs come into a market help to innovate and disrupt. That's not only good for our economy, but it will help bring prices down as well.
Prices that Megan Kaiser has to pay to get through the season ahead.
We're gonna work some longer hours and be a little less comfortable for a while.
Our thanks to Jolene Kent for that report. Now, one other sector that's been hit hard by inflation, airfare. Prices are soaring. If you've tried to schedule a vacation, I'm sure you've seen over 18% just in the past month. That's the fastest rise on record.
Yeah, I felt it.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Now to the fight over abortion rights. The Senate has failed to advance a bill that would have protected the right to a legal abortion. The vote was in response to last week's leaked Supreme Court opinion that indicated Roe versus Wade would be overturned. The Women's Health Protection Act, it passed the House, but on the Senate floor, it fell far short of the 60 senators needed to break a filibuster. All 50 Republicans, along with Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, voted against the bill. Vice President Kamala Harris was in the Senate chambers as that vote failed.
The Senate failed to stand in defense of a woman's right to make decisions about her own body.
NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Rafa joins me now. Good morning, Ali. This legislation, we knew it was basically doomed from the start, right? Democrats wanted everyone on the record, but it wasn't going to have enough votes to pass. There was still a fiery debate on the Senate floor, though, so walk us through what happened.
Yeah, Vicky, good morning. As you mentioned, this bill was likely doomed from the start, but that doesn't make it any less consequential. And you really got a sense of that even before the voting started on this bill yesterday. You had House Democrats who were pro-choice marching to the floor of the Senate, chanting, "My body, my decision." Some of these lawmakers even choosing to stay within the chamber up in the gallery seating during this vote. You had Vice President Harris, as you mentioned, brought a tie-breaking vote if needed, but at the end of the day, Democrats did not have the votes from the beginning to get this done, nor did they have the votes to pass a filibuster, a GOP-led filibuster, to get it done either. So this was largely a symbolic vote. It really gave Democratic senators an opportunity to use this high-profile moment to really deliver emotional speeches, powerful speeches about the impact this could have on women going forward if Roe is indeed overturned. Listen to how Senate Majority and Minority leaders Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell reacted to the vote yesterday.
For many Republicans, this has always been about making abortion illegal everywhere.
Democrats' radical bill is as extreme gets.
And Vice President Harris, you played a little bit of that clip at the top there. She mentioned after the vote that this really makes it clear that the Senate does not align with where the majority of the American people stand on abortion rights and reproductive rights, Nikki.
Well, Ali, as you mentioned, Senator Joe Manchin was the lone Democrat to vote against this bill with the Republicans. What did he say about his reasoning?
Yeah, he was actually the last vote cast on the Senate floor. And it's not that much of a surprise because this is exactly how he voted when this bill was proposed and brought to the floor earlier this year. But he said that while he is indeed pro-choice, he is indeed pro-codifying Roe v. Wade, this bill that was voted on yesterday was just a little too broad for him. Listen to what he had to say.
I was hopeful that the Democratic Party, having control of their agenda, would put a piece of legislation forward that would codify Roe v. Wade. 7% of American public wants Roe v. Wade to be codified, as has been precedent law for 50 years. The bill we have today to vote on, the Women's Health Protection Act, and I respect people who support it. But no mistake, it is not a Roe v. Wade codification.
And Manchin was also asked yesterday what his vote means for his party in the grand scheme of things, where he stands within his party. And he simply said that he understands he doesn't fit the mold. And that's just who he is, Vicky. And that's what we've seen time and time again as he continues to kind of break with his party.
Yeah, this isn't the first time we've seen that with Joe Manchin. All right, Ali, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Breaking overnight, a fast-moving wildfire tore through a number of multi-million-dollar homes in Southern California near the famous coastal town of Laguna Beach. NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer is on the ground in Laguna Niguel with the latest. Hey, Miguel, good morning.
Good morning. Considering the size of this wildfire, it was fairly destructive on this one block alone. We're told.
Hi, I have a quick question.
Were destroyed. Now, this fire is still
Okay, so I was looking for the essential oil for Walmart.
So
I don't know.
many folks return
I don't know
home.
if you guys have those. Wait, let me get the name. Mate Domidora.
Raging off California's pristine coastline, it wasn't the
Okay.
size, but the sheer power of this volatile wildfire.
The Ruda, Reels oil. No, not Ruda, but it's the oil. Yeah, the magic and ritual oil.
Have you been checked on the Walmart website?
Yeah, I checked on the website, but I don't know if you have it in store.
Okay, do you have the Walmart ECC number or Walmart item number?
Okay, let me see if I have the item. Where can I find the item number? Item. Oh, they said item only sold online, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, my friend.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, thank you.
Already facing a dangerously fast start to fire season due in part to climate change, this morning California's beauty and Mother Nature's fury, fighting in a fast-moving fire that took homes but thankfully spared lives.
Overnight, conditions here improved dramatically. For the most part, those winds have died down, but that may not be the case over the next 24 to 48 hours. So this continues to be a big concern here that new spot fires could erupt. The good news here, only about 20 homes have been lost. This community is very densely populated. It could have been so much worse. Guys, back to you.
All right, Miguel Almaguer, thank you so much.
Let's go ahead and get a closer look at those conditions in California. We were just talking about this yesterday.
Yeah, Michelle Desmond is here in studio with us. We sure were, and look at that, right overnight.
I know. And you guys, it's so scary. You mentioned 20 homes, but there were 100 in its path.
Yeah.
And this started so fast, and it's really unique. So let's talk about it for a second before I get to the graphics. Normally in Southern California, Savannah, you're familiar with this. You get those Santa Ana winds, those dry, warm winds. This was a cool wind off the Pacific Ocean. So this is very typical for this time of year, that wind. It was a 30-mile-per-hour wind, just started these fires because we are so dry. So let's tell you what's happening right now, what we can expect this afternoon. Miguel kind of said it perfectly. We saw the winds die down this morning. We're looking at cool conditions, really, 47 degrees. Relative humidity isn't all that low, but as we go throughout the afternoon hours, we're going to see the winds picking up once again. We put a contour over it. That's indicating where we're going to see 25-mile-per-hour winds. Once again, it was only 30 miles per hour yesterday, but we are so dry. In fact, 34% of the West is in an extreme drought, and that's not going to get any better as we go the next, let's say, 6 and 8 months. We need to get some good rain in here. We started out the season really good, but not so much after that. So here's the drought monitor. Again, 34% of the West in an extreme drought. And when you look at the statistics, California had the driest January to April on record. And when we're looking at rainfall, we are in the teens compared to normal. So Los Angeles, 92% compared to normal. San Francisco, 16%, and Long Beach. Here is what we're looking at today. Red flag warning, 6 million again under a red flag warning. Again, it only takes one little spark to start these raging wildfires because we have the winds in place and because we are so bone dry. The low humidity is in place too. So Denver, Pueblo, down to Clayton, you are into a critical risk. Now, as we're talking about other big stories, that's a big story today, but we are also under a severe threat again in the upper Midwest. We had tornadoes yesterday. We're going to see the threat for that once again today. 10 million at risk. We can see really large hail once again, winds gusting to 70 miles per hour, and tornadoes. And then as we go throughout tomorrow, we're going to see that shift into the east. So you guys, it feels like it's on repeat, right? That same story. We're not getting a break. It's day after day. Everything's lasting really long. It's just so crazy to in the same weather forecast. And then snap, higher elevation. Thank you so much. We'll see you next hour. Now let's get to some breaking news out of Europe, which had a major impact on the war in Ukraine. This morning, Finland's president and prime minister had
have issued a joint statement expressing their desire to apply
Let's
for
go.
NATO membership, quote, without delay. Now, Russia sees NATO expansion as a threat and has warned of consequences if historically neutral countries like Finland, like Sweden, join the alliance. Speaking yesterday alongside Britain's Prime Minister, Finland's president said Russia would only have itself to blame if his country does join NATO.
We would like to maximize our security, develop crossing to membership in NATO. You ask whether how they see possible Finnish joining. Well, if that would be the case that we join, well, my response would be that you caused this. Look at the mirror.
NBC News senior national correspondent Jay Gray joins us now from Lviv, that's in western Ukraine. Jay, thanks for being with us. So we'll get to the latest on the ground there in Ukraine in just a moment, but first let's start with this potential NATO expansion. So the Finnish president, as we just heard, just mentioned security there. That's, of course, Article 5. We've talked so much about this, that collective defense clause within NATO, but this is a historically neutral country. So how big of a step would this be, and how is Moscow taking this?
Yeah, it is a big deal, and I can tell you that even on the ground here, people are talking about this move. Look, remember that they share about an 800-mile border with Russia, and since the invasion, in public polls, Russia joining NATO has gone from 30% positive to over 80% at this point. So clearly, it's had some effect on how they feel about their security. Let's get to a joint statement from both the president and the prime minister. In that statement, they say NATO membership would strengthen Poland's security. As a member of NATO, Finland would strengthen the entire defense alliance. Finland must apply for NATO membership without delay. We hope that the national steps, sorry, I've had a little breakup here, still needed to make the decision will be taken rapidly within the next few days. So they want to move this along as quickly as possible. Russia has responded, and they've talked about this in the past, warned about this, saying that there would be, and these are their words, consequences if the nation was to join NATO.
There's a lot to watch for there as that unfolds. Obviously, a dramatic shift on the international stage if it were to happen. Now let's talk about what's going on there in Ukraine. So we're again watching Mariupol and that besieged steel plant where those wounded soldiers are holed up. We're hearing, no medical supplies, amputees. It just seems like just such a terrible situation within those walls. And we understand Ukraine has been in talks to get them out, has proposed a deal to Russia. Tell us a little bit about that in the situation there. Is there a possibility that they get out soon?
Well, there seems to be no movement back and forth. We do know that Ukraine has offered to trade war criminals for those who are injured to allow them to leave. The UN has been negotiating for weeks trying to get those injured soldiers out of that steel plant. To this point, there's just been no movement from the Russian side. They refused to have a temporary peace treaty there to move these soldiers out. And you described it perfectly. They're in this area, many of them with severe wounds. There's no medical care, no doctors, no medicine, and no wraps that are sterilized. So they're in desperate need of help. What we do know on the ground is that troops have now sealed off underground exits from that steel plant, and they're moving tanks into the region.
Lots of for there. Now, I also do quickly want to ask you, before I let you go, about an occupied southern city. It's Kherson, and that's because this could be a look at what's to come. Because yesterday, Russian appointed authorities in the city said they plan to ask that this city be annexed. That's something they're asking of Moscow, of Putin. On the Ukrainian side, an advisor to the president did tweet and compare this essentially to asking to join Mars or Jupiter, basically dismissing this. But what does this mean? What could happen here?
Well, it was the first city to fall, and Russian occupiers are the ones saying this. They plan to appeal to Vladimir Putin personally, directly, to say that it's time to annex this area. They say by the end of the year that Kherson will be under Russian law. The Kremlin seems kind of cold on the idea. They have put out an official statement. I'll read part of it here. It basically says it's up to the residents of Kherson to determine their own fate.
Very Jay Gray, as always, we so appreciate your reporting. Thank you so much.
For more on Ukraine,
Information still continues to be the easiest way to just get information centralized somewhere and then shot out to somebody else. And for us, that's extremely important because half our team is remote. It's been super efficient for us to communicate across time zones.
Buy your next used car online at clutch.ca to get home delivery and a 10-day money-back guarantee.
As always, we
What
so
one?
appreciate your reporting. Thank you so much.
for more on
Did you call the lawyer? The number I gave to you. Okay. Peace out.
See that Russia could potentially have NATO troops and weapons, as Jay talked about, along the 800-mile border that it shares with Finland. What kind of response do you expect from Russia if Finland does indeed join the alliance?
Well, Vladimir Putin has threatened, and I quote, severe military and political consequences if Finland should join NATO. Practically speaking, though, there's not much he can do to stop this from happening besides his political bluster. Russian forces have invaded Finland many times over the centuries. The Finnish are well aware of this. For 77 years now, they have thought that their main security was coming from neutrality, from non-alignment, being neither part of the Russian or Soviet bloc or the NATO bloc. The invasion of Ukraine has dramatically changed their thinking. As Jay said, 6 months ago, only 20% of the Finnish people supported joining NATO. Now that is well over 80%. The decision has been made at the highest levels. We expect on Monday that the parliament will debate and vote on this, and it should take place probably within this year. Both Sweden and Finland will formally join the NATO alliance, greatly strengthening that military alliance.
Now, that is a dramatic change from 20% to 80% public approval. You talked about it, Sweden also considering joining NATO. These two Nordic nations have this long history of neutrality, but as we heard Finland leaders saying, Russia, look in the mirror. If you want to know why this country is going to join, it's because of you. What does this mean for the world? Does it make the world a safer place?
I think it does. Having these very powerful militaries, Finland and Sweden have very strong militaries on their own, and now bringing them into NATO and having that kind of resources consolidated helps deter Russian aggression. I mean, that's the main point. NATO has always been a defensive alliance, first against the Soviet Union and now increasingly over Russia. I got to tell you, whatever Putin thought was going to happen when he invaded Ukraine, that he would quickly occupy that he would use that as sort of a wedge to split NATO, it's completely backfired. It's exactly the opposite. NATO is more unified now than at any time since in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, when they rallied to defend the United States. It's growing stronger, not weaker. Putin has created the very military and political nightmare he was trying to avoid.
And this would be a significant expansion if these two Nordic countries join. Earlier this week, Joe, Ukraine's foreign minister said the country's military goals have evolved since the war began. Now, instead of just reclaiming the territory it lost, it wants to recover all the Ukrainian spaces that Russia has occupied since 2014. Is that a real possibility? And what's a realistic goal for the Ukrainians at this point before I let you go?
That would be a heavy lift. I understand why they want to do that. Of course, every nation would want to expel the foreign invaders, would like to get their land back. But I think it's more realistic to think that Ukraine can push the Russian forces back to the lines they held before the war, that is February 24th, as the U.S. artillery that we're giving them moves in, as they're getting more and better equipment. I think the likelihood is that Ukraine can push the Russian forces back, but push them all the way out, push them out of Crimea, that may be a bridge too far.
Joe Cirincione, we appreciate your insight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coming up, more than 500 million cases worldwide and counting.
Now, when we come back, we'll bring you the latest in the fight against COVID as President Biden prepares to speak at the second ever global COVID-19 summit. This is Morning News.
This morning, the second ever COVID-19 Global Summit will take place with President Biden expected to speak.
Yeah, it's a virtual event and it's happening as COVID, of course, is still a worldwide challenge. According to the latest numbers from NBC News and Johns Hopkins University, more than 500 million COVID cases have been reported and more than 6.2 million people have died. Joining us is Dr. Mario Ramirez. He's an emergency physician and the former pandemic and emerging threats coordinator in the Office of Global Affairs. Doctor, always great to have you with us. So let's talk through this summit. One of the big objectives here, according to the White House, is, quote, recommitting intensity to global response. We've seen this recent spike in cases around the world. We're seeing it here at home, but then also particularly in places like South Africa and Shanghai and China. What do you think should be the top priority here as these world leaders come together?
Well, good morning, Samantha. Thanks for having me back. I think that the key points for this summit, I think, are the right ones, which is to say that we've got to continue to sort of refocus the world's attention on the pandemic. It's not over, unfortunately, but we've got to continue to drive vaccination around the world. Unfortunately, we did not meet the goal of the first summit to vaccinate 70% of the world's population, and we still have a lot of work to go there, and so that's going to be a big focus. It's also really important, though, that I think we work to expand access to testing and especially to treatment. There are a lot of new medicines that have come onto the market since the last summit, but access to those medicines is still really limited in much of the world. And it's clear that we're not going to vaccinate our way out of additional cases in the future. And so we've got to expand access to those treatments. And then the last thing I think we've got to do is we've got to create some structure that's going to better protect the world for future threats.
Doctor, let's talk about COVID boosters in older Americans. I was surprised by this statistic. According to the CDC, about 1 in 3 Americans who are 65 or older, they got their initial vaccinations, but they actually haven't gotten a first booster. How risky is that?
Well, it's becoming a bigger problem, Becky. What the data would show is that people are really well protected after their third dose. And in fact, the primary series really should be 3 doses. And that's one of the first things that we really have to do. I think the CDC has to change this definition of what they call fully vaccinated to really reflect the fact that people need 3 doses of this vaccine. But the data also shows that as you move further out from that third dose, typically 4 to 6 months, that your potential for getting reinfected, and if you're an older American, your risk of having a serious outcome goes up significantly. And that's really where we have failed in this country. We have failed to impart a sense of urgency that people need to get that third shot, and they need to get a 4th shot when they become eligible.
It's interesting. We hear so much from doctors about kind of failing in the messaging, not with the shots themselves or anything like that. Doctor, quickly before I let you go, I do want to ask you about this new report, especially as we head into summer, from researchers that suggest that smaller indoor events are more likely to spread COVID compared to larger outdoor gatherings. Now, it's not really a surprise given the emphasis that we've heard on the safety of being outdoors versus indoors. But can you tell us a little bit about these findings? I mean, what group sizes are we talking about, and what should people keep in mind as we head into summer?
Yeah, the study that you're talking about, Savannah, was a study conducted down in Austin where they took a look at large public health gatherings, typically in the tens of thousands size, and compared that to smaller indoor gatherings. And they found that the rate and the risk of transmission was higher in smaller settings. And as you said, that's not too surprising, but I would say, that's a little more nuanced than that. And it really is contextual because it depends on how many cases are out there circulating in the community. And in particular, it also depends on whether you're taking the preventive measures before the event. Are you testing people before they come? Are you requiring them to be vaccinated? In particular, what are the ventilation settings that you're using for that indoor event? There are ways that we can really drive down the risk of having smaller indoor gatherings to help make those things much safer. And so it's important to contextualize those things and realize that this isn't a static risk and it's going to continue to fluctuate based on the local conditions.
Do a rapid test and open some windows, right? Dr. Ramirez, thank you so much. Always great to see you. Now coming up on Morning News, now final words, what we're learning from 911